This is the edge of Lound Wood, as many of you will know, and the now famous Lound Wood annex is behind me. As also as this beautiful field of Phacelia. There's a lovely smell as I stand here because I'm standing on some pineapple weed. So not only have I got the heady scent of Phacelia, but it's also got that little touch of pineapple. Almost sounds like an ice cream, Phacelia and pineapple. But it really is lovely, and I'm going to have half an hour walking around this field. I'm having a look again for any hummingbird, hawk moths, or any other migrant moths that may be passing through or nectaring on this Phacelia. Bordered straw is kind of moth that could turn up. But I want to see whether there's any hummingbird, hawk moths. We've got a while before I need to start and think about setting up for moth trapping. But it is the most perfect night for it. It's windless, not the slightest of breezes. It's very humid. It's very warm too. Well, it's absolutely gorgeous. And there's two, possibly three painted ladies just along the edge of this field that I've just walked along. As with any sort of late evening painted ladies, you tend to flush them off the ground. Whether they roost on the ground overnight or not, or they do fly up eventually into a more arboreal sort of resting place, I don't know, but they're certainly hatching out. Painted lady has bred on the creeping thistle that's in this field. I found three sort of plants that had larval webs on yesterday or the day before it was when I came. No sign of any moths yet, but I'm going to walk down to the bottom, to that bottom corner on the left there, and then we go along the hedge to the right and slowly work our way back up the field. But it's a nice thing to do, to pass that time on while we wait for the skies to darken. Well, I've just had a hummingbird hawk moth about 15 feet just into the Phacelia here. Quite brief from when I picked it up. It doesn't appear to have hung around, but it could be anywhere in this lot. I'm thrilled with that, absolutely thrilled. Well, we're all set, just waiting for darkness to descend. Everything's set up and in place. I've got a cup of tea poured out, although it is a bit warm for tea weather, to be honest. Very warm temperature. The temperature's still over 20 centigrade. It'll be interesting to see what happens tonight, which is the 29th of June. Tomorrow is forecasted to be the last of the hot days during this current heat wave. And we've had several days or several nights of really high temperatures and classic conditions. This is the first night I've bothered to come out and trap. Usually, the very first night when you get hot temperatures after so-called normal sort of summer nighttime temperatures, that's usually the best night, that first night of any hot spell. It then tends to settle down a bit. That's what I've always found over the years. And so we might not get the amount of moths that you might expect with such classic conditions. But we'll see what happens. It's a waiting game. And the first thing we're waiting for is for that sky to darken. Well, we're off and running on June the 29th. Perfect conditions. 2200 is the start of the session. We'll certainly give it a couple of hours, probably 3. Who knows? We'll see how it turns out. Can the 700th species for the Ecrine area have come to this light? It would be great if it does. What it could be, there are up-teen species that we could get. So let's see. Well, that sky is continuing to darken behind me, but we have got a nice range of species in, and what's nice, or particularly nice about it, is that it's more micros than macros. I've only got 4 species of macro moths in, macros being the larger moths, and it's pleasing to see that we're getting more micro moths. All the people have also noticed an increase in micro moths at their traps, even if they don't record them particularly frequently. So it's nice to see an improvement, because the last couple of years or so micro moths have been in poor numbers. That's poor in terms of actual numbers of a particular species, or a number of actual micro species attending the light, full stop. Got onto about 13 or 14 species already here. Nothing particularly unusual, and say that's compared to just 4 species of macro moths. So very pleasing so far. More macro moths will start and come in once that sky is a little bit darker, but beautiful conditions, absolutely fabulous. Well, it's a nice busy sheet, not a sheet that's overrun to the best thought manner of the last trapping session. This is far more manageable. Lots of moths coming in, but it's easy enough to keep a stock of what's in and as what has been in. Nothing unusual, nothing rare at all yet, but it's just nice once again to see lots of moths. Temperature's down to 18 centigrade now, so we're hardly going to be plagued with frost in the morning. But of those moths that have come in, large yellow underwing, there's had a few of those now already. Maybe they will be in larger numbers than there have been in the last few years. I've not had so many of those, and if you've ever dealt with lots of large yellow underwings, you'll know why I'm quite appreciative of the fact that I haven't had many. Other species that have come in, beautiful hook tip, yeah, the first dingy footman of the year, and there's also an increase in common footman and scarce footman too. Not a lot to say which is unusual. There's a couple of Plutella xylostella or diamondback moths, and that's a migrant species, so a couple of those. And Graphilata yanthinana. Now it's a tiny little tortrix, but it's a beauty of a little thing, and one of those is on the sheet somewhere. But to say, they are very small even for a tortrix. But it's a nice selection of species, say over 50 species. I need to go round the light again, have a cup of tea, and weigh the situation up, see what's sneaked in. But lots of crambids, which are mostly Chrysitutia cormella and Agriphila straminella. They're the 2 commonest of the grass veneers that you will attract to your light trap. So, cup of tea time. As you can see, lots of moths on the sheet, and unlike as at Besthorpe a few days ago, I think there are more moths than flies. Most of the moths are the grass veneers, Chrysitutia cormella and Agriphila straminella. Nothing different from those 2 species in the grass veneer line, but plenty of moths where doing well for species. We're approaching 70 species. So it's a great session, it really is. Lots of activity. It's one of those sessions again where I need to constantly be looking around the sheet to see what's coming in. It's very easy to miss something, and when it's busy like this, I would rather put photos in rather than try and get some footage of any of the moths that's in. But the species that are on the sheet at the moment, we've seen them all several times, but I will be putting photos in. The drinker moth comes in, that's the second of this evening. It's a great session, and I will tell you why in a minute. Well, the good news is that I have got the 700th species for the ecrin area, and it's a moth that I didn't expect to occur here, largely because Anana lancialis here is pretty much a wetland species. I know that ecrin flash is only about a quarter of a mile from here and within sight of Lound wood here, but in Nottinghamshire, Anana lancialis has always been restricted to the Idle Valley, and especially the Missen Carr area. But last year, I think it was, I had this when I trapped in the middle of Sherwood Forest, which was astounding. It really surprised me. This is a species which I think, whether it's just moving around because the nights have been so warm, or whether this is one of those species which is looking to expand its range in Nottinghamshire. So Anana lancialis is a 700th species for the ecrin area. And here's 701. Depending how I edit the start of this video, I gave this moth a mention, thought it might be nectaring on the phacelia in the field at the side of us. And I almost lost this moth, and it's a bordered straw. And it's a migrant species. I think this is only my second or third record. The first ones I had were at home. We never, Dennis and myself, never trapped this in 2006, the brilliant year for migrant moths. It was great for virtually every species except for rusty dot pearl, I remember, Udea ferrogalis, and bordered straw. And this I did lose. Came in, I almost had it in the net. It was about just reaching for a pot, and then it eluded the net and disappeared somewhere in the foliage. 10 minutes later, it come out from the side of where I'm sat. So I'm chuffed to get this. It's always nice to get a migrant, but when it's a migrant that you don't trap very often, it's something special. But many people might well be catching more of these later in the year. So 2 new moths for the ecrin area arriving at the sheet and the light within seconds of each other. Anana lancialis and bordered straw. Brilliant. That's why I love this hobby. Nice to see an old favourite of this channel standing alone in the midst of a range of species. Lots of footmen of various descriptions and species now. An increasing number of grass veneers too. It's a very busy sheet. Lots of moths, good numbers of micros. The sheet is dominated, in fact, by micros. And that's absolutely fabulous to see. But amongst all these micros stands a channel favourite in the form of a solitary brimstone. the sheet is full of moths. And I'm doing something that I rarely do, and that's sit and just look and enjoy these high numbers of moths. It's great to see the sheet full again. But you have to be constantly on the lookout for something new that's dropped in. You also have to make the most of nights like this. I haven't, so this is of this recent heat wave, which is going to end in a couple of days' time. This is the first time I've trapped. Just didn't fancy it sometimes. Today I did, and I'm very glad that I've come out as well. It's an absolutely brilliant night, and it's been far better than I expected. 2 new species for definite, but I think that in the tub to the left of me, I think there's possibly another 2 micros which would be new to the ecrin area. It's a very busy sheet, and it's nice to see more moths than flies and caddisflies. In fact, there's not been so many caddisflies. I don't mind caddisflies, but sometimes they just get in the way of the moths that you want to record. I have no plans to go home immediately. I probably won't have a parking space even when I get there. I intend to enjoy this night, and I still think that something else could come in yet. There are 2 scalloped oaks which have just recently come in. Amazing, isn't it? You get to 1 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden different species start to come in. Scalloped oak is new for the year, and while I'm laid prone like this, we'll just go through the list, and I'll put photos in so that you can see what I'm waffling on about. But those moths, the interesting moths, they're broad-bordered yellow underwing, first one in, and quite small individuals as well. They're a really stocky moth, broad-bordered yellow underwings, but that's the first one of the year, but it was very small. And quite surprisingly, after getting 20 the other week at Besthorpe, just only recently had the first elephant hawk moth. Not had any hawk moths of any description at all this evening until about 10 minutes ago. Surprising how nights vary. If you trap at the same place every night, you get predominantly the same moths, but you will get a range of moths each night that are different to the previous night. You don't trap the same species all the time, and there's usually some common species that you would expect that you don't get. But see what else. Just the one peach blossom, blood vein. Always nice to see blood vein. Marbled white spot. I'm not sure whether I've ever showed you marbled white spot. Coronet. There's 4 coronets in, of varying descriptions, and lots of micros. That's mainly what's in the containers in that tub. It's a very varied list of moths, and heavily made up of micros. Well, just over 100 species now. It's a long time since I've got over 100 species. I'm certainly going to continue until 2, and I think 2 o'clock will be it. But there's some interesting species. I've got a lot to make sure of the identity of in the morning. Some very interesting species coming. Blackneck is one that's turned up. Don't get blackneck here very much. I'll have a cup of tea in a minute or 2, and we'll run through some of the more interesting species that have come in. But there's just a little bit of a breeze now, which is nice actually. That's a lot I could have done with this when we started trapping earlier. That 10 o'clock. So, cup of tea time it is, and we'll have a roundup of what's come in. But what a night it's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Well, the sheet's as busy as it has been for the last couple of hours or so. We're approaching 2 o'clock in the morning, but I'll just go through some of the species that have just made it. Small angle shades, one we've seen recently, lesser yellow underwing and end grey would have all just come in. Common white wave is one that I may not have showed you before, and it's a very nice white moth with I think 3 very thin black or dark grey cross lines across the forewings. White satin is an absolutely beautiful moth. At first glance it appears like a larger version of yellowtail, but the wings have a beautiful satin sheen to them, and it is larger than both yellow and brown tails. It's a fabulous moth, an absolute beauty. Other species that we've had, I'll just run through them. And buff footman, the first ones of the year. Dunbar, which is a very variable and attractive moth. Not done so well as it used to here. It used to be a very common moth here, but I don't get it so often anymore. Let's have a look of the micros. We've had another brown China marking. Calamatropha palladella. That's a nice, almost very similar to a grass veneer, and very much a wetland species. It's a nice one to catch, and quite early too. But the highlights, obviously, bordered straw and Anania lancialis. And now I think it's time to go through the sheet for one last time and then start and think about packing up. What a night it's been. Am I glad that I came out this evening? Very nearly didn't, but certainly glad to have. They're quite beautiful. They're developing too. They do change, and sometimes they change quite quickly. Very beautiful. Almost like a high altitude cirrus type cloud. The most magical thing, often you'll see them in the early morning hours during midsummer. You see a lot of these when Gary Wilson and myself were observing meteors during the summer months. And I remember Dillis and me, we walked home from Clipston Old Quarter one night, accompanied by the most magnificent display of Noctilucent Clouds, and this is a belter too. It's an absolute cracking display. Beautiful natural phenomena, available to everyone for free. Absolutely beautiful. What a way to end the night.